How's it going, guys? Welcome to Audio Addiction. We have a special guest with us tonight. He can say his name, what he does, all that jazz.
My name is Bob Dylan. Just kidding. My name is Eric Harrison. I'm an Americana artiste from the Garden State, sitting on my front porch in real live Jersey, like my brother Brandon here, and like a lot of struggling artists who are a dime a dozen. I am very appreciative of anybody giving a hoot what I have to say. So thank you, Brandon, for having me.
Of course, no problem. Like I said earlier, nothing to a fellow New Jerseyan. People always think that I am not a New Jerseyan because I don't have, I don't have a strong New Jersey accent. So
what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like that. I gotta talk like that. Sometimes little words I think come out, but if you live in Jersey, you know the vibes. But the first question, Eric, I'm sure this is gonna be a long one, but I'm excited to hear it. How did you start out with music? What kind of got you interested in making it? Was that something that's always been in your life and you're just like, man, I always want to start making music? Just give us the Eric origin story, as you will.
I grew up, I'm upper middle class suburban New Jersey. I had grandparents who lived on the Upper East Side. I was very close to my maternal grandfather, and when I was around 10, he bought me my first cassette at I think it was at McCrory's, if they had McCrory's in New York City, but it was Beatles 6.
Oh, nice.
And the American version of Beatles 6, I would come to learn, differed. In fact, there wasn't even a Beatles 6 released in England, but I didn't know such things. And it had the song 8 Days a Week. And I wore that thing out on my crappy little red tape deck. And about a year later, when my grandfather said he was going on a business trip to London, and I told him, he said, "I'll call you Sunday night." I said, "Well, that's your Sunday night there, but they have an extra day." I said, "What are you talking about? Like in England, they have 8 days per week. Who taught you that?" Well, it's like, wait a minute. Are you quoting the Beatles song 8 Days a Week? Yeah, I figured. No, Eric, it's called exaggeration for the sake of expressing how much Paul and John love the girl. They're saying it's like, an 11 on a 10 scale. Now, I was 11. I didn't get it. But that, to me, in retrospect, is a defining moment of how important the music that I love would become in my life. It's not like today where there are a lot of other things you can get obsessed with.
Sure,
there wasn't internet. There wasn't a whole lot of data. And I loved what I loved, and I furiously cataloged everything I loved, and I developed strong opinions about what I loved and didn't love. I would ride my bike to the public library. At East Brunswick Public Library, they let you take out a maximum of 7 LP records at a time. I would pick 7 that look good, ride them home on my bike, put them on chrome tape on my shitty tape deck, which is funny because chrome tape cost a little more money to maximize the sound quality, but the tape heads I was using were so atrocious it didn't make a difference. And so anyway, growing up, I was a band nerd. I played trumpet in various concert bands and orchestras and the marching band, which all the jokes thrown my way were totally deserved. But I was always that guy who was critical of stuff that people liked. Like we loved U2 in the 80s, and some of the stuff that they did when Bono started taking on his Jesus complex and started doing these grandiose statements. Even at age 17, I had a pretty well-developed bullshit detector, and I just railed against it because you don't need to do that. You have one of the most beautiful voices in the world. You've got a poetic gift. Shut the bleep up with the gospel overtaking the universe. And so the constant refrain that I would get from my friends is, if everything's bad to you, why don't you do it yourself? If you think that's so bad, why don't you do it yourself? And I kind of wanted to do it myself. I I never had the nerve. I didn't know if I had a good singing voice. I'd never really tried, except like in gag things. And then
Hmm.
my junior year of college, I was living in London. I had a junior year overseas, and I brought my trumpet with me, and thankfully I couldn't play it because the walls were too thin, the rooms were too tiny, and I had nowhere to go
Yeah.
to practice. And I decided, you know what? Why not now? Like, I can embarrass myself here. Why not get a guitar and see what happens? And I learned a few chords. As any musician knows, learning 3 chords does not take very long. I started writing songs that were atrocious, um, started playing them out. And every once in a while, I would hit on something that was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I kept at it. Of course, like every young person, I had dreams of making a living from it, or stardom. Of course, none of that ever panned out. But, on and off in my life over the 35 years since then, I'm 52 years old. I've had I've had these big creative surges where I go through this pattern of why bother? Nobody gives a crap. Why piss money away that I could be saving up? But then I'll come up with a good idea, and it'll come from deep within me, like this has to be done,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
if nobody gives a shit. And so I've kept at it since then. It's weird that I'm writing well in my 50s, because most of the people I love dry up in their late 30s. That is not virtue signaling. I'm not patting myself on the back. What I'm saying is I didn't peak when I should have in my 20s and 30s, which is when I might have had a better shot of really making a mark with this, because the kind of music I do was a hell of a lot more marketable in the 90s, when roots flavored rock and roll, like bands like Wallflowers and
Yeah.
the guy with the fake dreads, Counting Crows.
Counting Crows. Yeah.
Like, there was a real market for that in the 90s. Now, what I do is a very small niche, but it's still fun. I still keep doing it.
Well, that's great, Eric. Obviously, I love having different artists on because, like, again, my forte is not Americana music, but I have been I've had Americana artists on. I've had like that style of music on before, and I'm always willing to learn.
I know, dude. I watched a couple of your past interviews today, and I thought, what is this guy who's really into what I would call death metal want to do? What does he have to say to a sensitive singer songwriter artiste singing about women who've rejected him? Like that, that's a different genre. But kudos to you for being open minded enough to even want to talk to me.
I think it's like the whole thing for me is I always take it as like there's certain people that grow up listening to this sort of stuff, and they're like so enamored with why it's made, like the people that make it, people that influence it and stuff. And so for me personally, I want to try to be like the most well-rounded like interviewer musician kind of thing, where I'm like trying to find out new artists that maybe I haven't heard of. Obviously, I know Bob Dylan. I know you mentioned him at the top of the show, so I feel like that's one tick off the list here. But for me personally, it's always cool to hear different influences and like why people choose to start getting into music, because like it is so difficult, and to hear that you've been doing it for such a long time it's a cool thing for me to hear, because like I've been doing this for 5 years and I feel like that's an eternity. So I could only imagine making music and doing all that sort of stuff can be where you could choose to have other hobbies or something like that, but you keep coming back to music is always a really good thing. And
Yeah, you can't. You know what? I mean, if you have a genuine curiosity, Brandon, nobody can fake curiosity. Just
100%.
like nobody can. I mean, you can fake passion, but you can't fake it for 30 years. So you go where you have to go. You go where your soul gets sustenance, and that can be in a lot of different places. But I agree. It's cool hearing what gets people into music. and I'm not only into the kind of music I make. I love electronic music and funk and a lot of
Yes.
stuff that I would never go near and I love heavy metal. Like, oh my God, did I love Judas Priest in high school? And I mean, that's considered like, I don't know, maybe pop metal to people who are into, who are hardcore metal, but like, I like a lot of different stuff, and I appreciate the passion of anybody who follows it, whether they're making it or whether they're a fan and it has meaning in their life. It's like anything; it's something that can bind us together, and it's worth whether whether it can be monetized should not be the deciding factor on whether you follow through with it, whether that's as an artist or promoter or interviewer. If you need it to make a living, then you may be in deep shit. And then you do need to figure out how to monetize it.
That's
but
true.
if it's something, I mean, most people, I imagine almost everybody you interview has a day job, right?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, I
Yeah,
would say maybe this very minute percentage that do it for a living, which is
right.
great. That's the ideal position to be in, I'm sure.
If they're making money,
If they're making money.
it's really hard to do it for a living. So like a lot of people in my position, independent artists, lament the fact that 20,000 new singles come out every day on Spotify. I think
Yeah.
that's the statistic I've heard. So, a lot of us decry the fact like, oh, I'm in this world where how can I be heard when there's all this crap out there? Well, but the same forces that are allowing all that crap to be out there, if they didn't exist, you wouldn't be out there.
That's
Like
facts. Yeah.
between the technology and the distribution, the music I'm making now, if I gone back in a time machine and played it for myself when I was 20, like this is the music you'll be making in your 50s, and I heard that, I would say, wow, I'm going to get signed to a major label and be a rock star because the technology that's available now that makes my records sound exactly how I want them to hear, that was prohibitive back then. Nobody had that kind of money. And
Yeah.
the fact that I can do that now, and make something that I'm so proud of that rivals the stuff that I wanted to listen to by other people,
Hmm.
like that alone makes the trade-off worth it. So what if my lyric video gets 100 views and some crap put out by somebody in Nashville has 5 million views? That person's not my enemy. That person's not my competition. Like I'm my own competition. That's how I've come to view it, which it's a very freeing thing. It also helps me justify being a complete loser and having had no real success to date. But it works.
I mean, I wouldn't consider you a loser. I genuinely, because people think the same. I would imagine people think kind of similarly to what I do, where they're like, you would rather, spend your nights after work, interviewing people about music that like, maybe like this many people will care about. And I've always felt, music, like you said, brings people together. It's a commonality between all of us. And so for me, it's just like, if I could have someone find out about your music that didn't know about you, and it's like, man, I'm going to go check out Eric's stuff now, that
Appreciate
means
that.
more to me than if I got paid by YouTube to make this video, or like got paid to do this shit. That's just
Depends
what
how
it
much
comes
you
down
got
to.
paid though. But still, but you're also creating a body of work, and that's
Correct.
how I feel about what I do. Like, I have kids. They may have kids one day. The to leave some of what I've done behind. I mean, some of what I've done is embarrassing, and I would like to wipe it from the internet. But the stuff I've been doing lately, to leave that behind in the cloud, it really speaks who I am and what I loved. And I think like one of the things I love about my style of music, Americana, which is so broad, it encompasses, sensitive singer songwriters to bluegrass to power pop. I mean, it's a really big amorphous umbrella, but
Yeah.
I think one common aspect of it, you can really express your feelings in a powerful and profound way without being accused of being a wuss. Um, and there are so many different ways you can do it. Now you can do that in metal also. You can do that in electronic music. So that it's not exclusive to the genre, but the concept of roots, the metaphor of roots really fits my philosophy of the music I love, which is the root of a person. You are like roots is, dry sounding acoustic guitars and snare drums, but it's also about like, all right, here's how I'm feeling. How do I express it in a way that's interesting so that I can bear my roots? And to the extent those roots are interesting or the way I bear them is interesting, then I've created good art. Mm-hmm. If not, and I'm just crying because a girl won't return my phone call, then it's shitty art. But it's still roots art. Music. And at least that opportunity is there for you when you make it. So it's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always think, like you said, I always think that these videos will be on YouTube for eons. So my kids will inevitably find out about it at some point. I don't have kids now, but in future tense, sure. I'm sure they'll be very interested to see whatever's going on here. I guess.
And how fascinated they'll be at seeing, like, what was Dad like when he was young? before he was a pain in the ass and he told me to turn that music down. Wow, Dad, you were cool back then. What the hell happened?
Yeah, that's what I feel like that. I feel like that might happen with this, but I guess I've had asked this question to other people before. What do your kids think about your music? Because I feel like your kids would be the most honest with you about your music, I would imagine.
They're not overt fans of my style. When one of my favorite moments with my little one, I was driving up to Thanksgiving alone with her because my wife and my older one had gone separately. And she had inflicted Glee and Billie Eilish and a couple other things on me for like the first 2 hours of the trip. I said, but we made an agreement. I'm like, you get the first 2 hours, I get the next 2 hours. So I put on Blonde on Blonde by Bob Dylan. Now, that is a Dylan fan's Dylan album.
Yeah.
And it begins with, you say you love me and you're thinking of me, but you know you could be wrong. I mean, when people talk about hating Bob Dylan's voice, that album's a perfect example.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
And I love Bob Dylan's voice. It for reasons that would take a couple hours and bore people to tears to talk about. But so anyway, I'm playing, I think I'm up to Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, which is a really long song, sparse on instrumentation, very repetitive. It's got like 15 verses. And wow. And Jane and he plays, and the harmonica on that album is mixed really high. And my kid in the back of the car, who didn't want to sit in the front because it would be too close to my speakers playing Bob Dylan, and she wanted to text her friends and make TikToks. She says, that guy sounds like someone who's been living in the basement for years. So that's how, like, one reaction to the style of music I love. In terms of my music personally, both of my kids like it. My kids are 18 and 15 now. My 18-year-old frequently sings with me right here on the porch when I do Sunday night.
Oh, very cool.
Facebook shows. She's got a great voice. She's going to a conservatory for, she just graduated from high school, so she's going to a conservatory next year. She wants to do acting and singing, musical theater for a living. Not my genre by any stretch, but I think she kind of respects it and likes some of it. The little one is so obsessed with Olivia Rodrigo that really nobody else exists right now. And Olivia Rodrigo is really cute and her songs are really good. They're not my style that I like.
I feel that.
They're not supposed to be. And I to be honest, which is an expression I hate because young people use it too much. But if I were 17 now, like if you put out Olivia Rodrigo music when I was 16 or 17, I would have really dug it.
Yeah.
Because it speaks to the whole worldview of everything's black and white and everything's melodramatic and and her voice is nice. Her singing style annoys me, but that's not for my generation. It's what the youngsters are doing.
Yeah.
She speaks to them in their vernacular. So that's what pop music's about. And pop stands for popular.
That's
So
true.
it's all fine. And they haven't completely rejected me. I will say that they wouldn't exist if my wife didn't like my music, though. I had on our first date, which was a blind date, I had the audacity to hand my wife one of my CDs.
That's some balls. I
Yeah,
feel like that's a true New Jerseyan thing to do, you know.
it's New Jerseyan, but also I was very concerned with using my time economically
I
because
got you.
I knew from prior experience when I was single that I couldn't have a serious relationship with someone who was not a fan of what I'm so passionate
That's
about.
fair.
So
Yeah.
and you know, she checked all the boxes. She was pretty and funny and smart. Sorry to be superficial, but you know,
I
um,
got you. No.
and but you know, so the problem is though, this is where I really could have ruined everything before it even began. In the console in my car where I reached in to get my CD to give her, it was right next to a CD of the Bangles.
Oh.
Now, listen, I will go to my grave loving the Bangles, and the album All Over the Place by them is like a little pop gem.
Mhm.
Um, now you were born after they were even big, but
Yes.
one doesn't look at the Bangles and think of them as a credible rock and roll band. However, um, unknown fact, they absolutely were, and the album All Over the Place by them is like a great little Beatles album, and
Okay.
it's really a fantastic little pop record. And when I say little, I mean because it's short, not because I'm denigrating. It's like a half-hour record. But anyway, my wife, who comes from a musical theater family, who could sing all of Rodgers and Hammerstein, but who could not name a Beatles album if you asked her. She saw she saw me reach into the console and she saw the Bangles album. And this is, you know, a girl I just had one date with, spent a couple hours with. And she looks at me like, the Bangles, huh? I'm like, please don't judge. If you allow me to, I'll play that album for you someday. Okay, cool. So I give her my CD and I'm driving away thinking, maybe I get a second date. Then again, she thinks I like the Bangles, and who knows what that might mean to her. Thankfully, I got a second date, and
There
that
we
worked
go.
out.
There we go. Well, that's awesome. You know, again, I totally agree with the whole pop sentiment. Not that I'm a pop hater, because there's definitely pop artists that I like now currently, but I know that is not my cup of tea or forte too much. So maybe I'll have to delve into that lane a little bit
You
more.
don't have to.
I don't have to, but you know,
If something pulls you there,
for well-rounded sake, I'll
right?
probably wind up doing it. But the next question, Eric, we kind of touched on it a little bit. Who influences you? You know, who influences your sound? You know, just to name a few artists, I guess.
Sure. So for those who are familiar with pop music in the '80s and '90s, it's obvious when you hear me sing that I'm influenced by Elvis Costello.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
in fact, it was for a long time a bad thing that I was trying to shake off because I mean, if it weren't for Elvis, I would be a songwriter and I would be a singer. I don't think I'd be anywhere near as good, and I wouldn't. I mean, if it weren't for Elvis, I wouldn't sound like Elvis. So back when I harbored the illusion of doing this for a living, or at least trying to cut a space and a reputation for myself in the world, I was hounded by the fact that people who would review my records, i.e., cassettes in the '90s, would say Eric Harrison is clearly a fan of Elvis Costello. And I think, damn it, how do I break free of this? I can't fake it. Like I naturally developed a singing voice that is like his because I spent thousands of hours singing along. And now I'm completely at peace with it because I am who I am. But between him, I mean, 1986 was a pivotal year for me. Elvis released two incredible albums, my two favorite of his, even among the 30, maybe 40, 50 albums he's released since he
Wow.
started in 1977. He released King of America and Blood and Chocolate. The album, he had a dry spell where his band broke up. He kind of put the pieces back together.
Mm-hmm.
This album, King of America, was truly an Americana album. He played with brilliant session musicians, people who had played with Elvis Presley,
Oh, very cool.
famous musicians, and the beauty, the economy of the songs, the melodies, the lyrics. There was not a wasted syllable on that album, and it was just so lushly. It was produced by T-Bone Burnett, who is one of the top, most revered people in the Americana space.
Okay.
And then later that year, only a few months later, he put out an album called Blood and Chocolate with his original band, The Attractions, which was just as amazing, but a completely different sound. And it harkened back to what Neil Young did. Pardon my Morky barking at people as they walk past out. It harkened back to what Neil Young had done in the 70s with Rust Never Sleeps and Live Rust. He would have acoustic versions and electric versions, both great. In Elvis's case, this album, Blood and Chocolate, it was no less, the songs were no less great than on King of America, but the language he spoke was ferocious, loud guitars, and punk attitude. Whereas on King of America, it was a very big-hearted, crooning, country western inflected album. Those two records blew me away, and that was also the year I finally dug deep into Bob Dylan, and I heard Blood on the Tracks for the first time. And Blood on the Tracks is Bob Dylan's confessional 1975 album that he made after he had almost died in a motorcycle wreck. His marriage had ended. He was already Bob Dylan. He had so much success, he didn't know what to do with himself, so he retreated to somewhere, Woodstock or somewhere near there, and he wrote this album. And there have been books written about how the album came into existence. He recorded it with some local people near where he grew up in Minnesota, I think. And then some of that was good, but then his record label made him come to New York and re-record it with session musicians. It didn't have the same life, so he scrapped all that, and then he re-recorded it out in the sticks. And what came out was just a masterpiece. And I mean, if you want to get into Bob Dylan or you want to understand why people love him, a good first sampler is the first song on Blood on the Tracks, Tangled Up in Blue. Okay. It's one of his masterpieces, and everything I've been saying about roots music, like this is a man poetically expressing his pain and his love in a way that's not obvious, in a way that it just struck a chord in me. And between King of America, Blood on the Tracks, and Blood and Chocolate, those three albums lit a fuse in me to want to write. And I had been starting to write, and it really began just a couple of years later when I was in London, when I had the opportunity.
It really kind of took, it really kind of put things into perspective for you musically. That's Absolutely. Very cool. I'll have to go check them out. Like I said, I'll have to email you and let you know what I thought of all three of them. But the next question, Eric, fun question. What would be one song you would recommend to new listeners, people who are checking out this episode and say, man, I really like what Eric's doing? What song would you recommend out of your catalog of music to listen to that kind of gives people a good...
I have to choose one.
Yeah, one. I know. That's tough.
Picture asking a mother of 10, which of your children do you want to save in the flood?
That's okay. Yeah.
I don't know. Would she say let them all drown? No. She'd want a 10-sided coin and she'd flip it because it would rip her heart out to choose one.
That's fair.
But if you want to get a good sample of what I'm all about lately, my two latest singles that are going to be on this EP, I will say this. If you listen to Relay Road by me and you listen to Astor Place by me, and you don't like either of them, then I recommend that you not waste further time listening to because those are two of the best things I've ever done. As goes for the rest of the singles I'll be rolling out. But on my last album, I had a song called Adrian, where I used a really great horn section from London turn it into the embodiment of the kind of British power pop that I love. I'd pick Adrian from my last album, but terms of most recent, these two new singles, Relay Road and Astor Place. I do
Dude,
appreciate you giving me an opportunity to plug my art to whoever may watch.
listen, that's the whole point of having people on here, is to obviously talk about what you got started in music, who you're influenced by, and of course, the ability to go check out the music is the first and foremost thing. And to me, it's always cool because, like, I love hearing it from the artists themselves. I know it's such a hard question because I would, people ask me, they're like, oh, well, what's your favorite episode interview you've ever done? And I'm like, that's like, asking your kids, like, which one's your favorite kid? So
yeah, maybe, but then again, some of us can be overly self-absorbed a-holes, so I'm sure you do have your favorites.
I have a list, but I wouldn't say
Won't
it
share
rotates. It rotates, So, and I don't want to share it because I'm not trying to give anybody a superiority complex or something. So, but the next question, Eric, a fun one. Obviously, you're from New Jersey, much like myself, so this should be very interesting. And I'm curious if you'd pick a New Jersey dish. But what is your favorite food to eat?
I did this really fun takeover of an Instagram page of called Grubs and Grooves, where they're into food and music.
Oh, very cool.
And I wanted to give a Jersey flavor, so I interviewed people. Taylor ham versus pork roll. What should it be called? That's a debate that's been raging in this state for decades.
100%.
What is my favorite? I'm not much of a foodie. I love an omelet with avocado and some turkey bacon in the morning.
There you go.
I like the honey glazed salmon that they make at Crossroads, the club in Garwood where my band plays all the time. See how I'm sliding in that plug for Crossroads? So the millions of people who watch this are going to flock to Crossroads for the glazed salmon now. I know what I'm doing for my people on the way up.
Crossroads is great. I've went there a few times. I haven't had the salmon before, so now I have to go.
It's very good. It's very good. And I'm not much of a beer drinker, but my beer aficionado friends have said like it's an unusually excellent selection of IPAs and all different stuff. But there's your favorite dish. You're not getting much out of me about food.
It's all good. I do want to know what your stance is. Is it Taylor ham or pork roll?
I don't like either.
You don't like either?
I'll call it it's too salty for me. But I'll call it whatever the person I'm dining with calls it. I'm going to be flexible. What I learned through my interview of a couple gentlemen who in their 70s is that, and through my research, my extensive research through this thing called Google, is that north of Route 195, or maybe even a little higher, New Brunswick and north, it's Taylor ham. And south and more of a Philly influence, it's pork roll.
Yeah.
But in fact, the product, I learned this from another friend, the product is made exclusively in New Jersey. So like if you move to Pennsylvania, far outside of Philadelphia, and you ask for Taylor ham, I don't think they'll know what you're asking for unless they're used to New Jersey people.
That's true.
Although it may be the same product.
It might be, but I will say, I mean, I'll take a hard stance. I've said it before. I call it pork roll. So
you're in Bordentown, bro.
I'm in Bordentown. Yeah,
that's the stance you have to take.
I got to take that stance. But I was gonna take that stance regardless anyway, because that's what it is.
Yeah, but if you were transplanted to Hackensack for a decade, you might not take that stance.
I don't know. I'd have to test that theory.
To the influence of North Jersey, which may or may not be a good thing.
That's very fair. That's very fair. Next question, Eric. If you could pick a song to cover, what would it be?
For me to cover?
For you to cover, correct.
I mean, I cover a fair share of songs with my band. I think cover songs should be done, if they're going to be recorded, that should be done only if you're really adding something to it.
I got you. Yeah.
If you're faithfully reproducing it, don't put it on a record. Do it for the crowd. If it's
play it live. Yeah.
Even. But if I had to pick a song that I would really like to cover and do interestingly, I'm going to cheat a little bit. One of my favorite weird songwriters is Robin Hitchcock.
Okay.
He used to cover live when I used to see him live in the 80s and 90s. He would do The Ghost in You by Psychedelic Furs. He did it gorgeously. And he did a very stripped down version. And I think you can probably find it in various incarnations that he's put out on records.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to record The Ghost in You. That would be a really fun cover to do. I have to think harder about something else that would be interesting, that would really put something in a new light, like Fountains of Wayne, who I also love.
Nice, yeah.
And the great Adam Schlesinger. They did a cover of "Baby One More Time" by Britney Spears. That was sublime. It was perfect. And in the 80s, right, this other dude I loved, Roddy Frame, who called himself Aztec Camera, he did a cover of Jump by Van Halen.
Oh, nice.
Started with and I commend to anybody who's listening that recording. It starts with this beautiful little strummed, arpeggiated acoustic guitar, and this guy with a voice a lot like mine. I get up and nothing gets me down. And then by the end, he gets out his electric guitar and he fucking wails, and it becomes like, smash the guitar, burn the house down within 5 minutes. If I were to do a cover, I would do one like that. Like you gotta subvert and turn it into something new.
Oh, 100%. I always stress that, at least for covers, from my perspective, if I don't know the band, I always love hearing a cover because the familiarity of a song. But I love when a band can make it personalized to them, their sound, their aura. So I feel like if you are going to do a cover, either, just do it the way that you would want to do it, or how you kind of want to hear it to be sound. And I think that's what comes across the best, at least from my perspective. I think Eric would agree for sure. But
absolutely.
The next question, Eric, if you were to pick somebody to collaborate with on an up-and-coming record, who would you want to work with?
Until 2019, I would have said T-Bone Burnett. T-Bone would be my guy, because every Americana record, everything he's ever produced is beautiful, and he's a guy who just gets what I'm going for. Mm-hmm. But in 2019, actually 2018, I met Kevin Salem, my producer, and there's nobody in the world I would rather make records with. If you gave me $1 million budget, and that's not like, I'm not virtue signaling here to say that, to show fidelity towards my guy. He's just that freaking great. and he and I, we have an intuitive understanding of each other. He's 10 years older than I am, but we love the same stuff. Mm-hmm. And he's thus far, he's the only person I want to collaborate with. Now, other artists, of course, I want to bring in. Like, I just recorded vocals with this amazing singer, Simi Stone, who's worked with David Byrne and Natalie Merchant and a bunch of other folks. And she's going to be on the record I do after this one. And there are certain people that Kevin knows who've played various instruments for me that we brought in to join the session. We got a drummer for some tracks. Nice. But in terms of my go-to person, nobody beyond who I'm already with. And I'm really lucky to be able to say that.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you found a good team. Glad it's working out. Obviously, shout outs to Erica, which I should have given her a shout out much earlier, but she sent me over, most of your catalog, and I obviously can look it up. So I checked out some songs, and I was like, especially the newer singles that are out, I love the production. That's something that I kind of like, I really try to sit down and listen to at my desk here, and just kind of get more like, immersed in it. And I was like, this, in terms of the sounds and, what I'm familiar with, I thought it sounded really like, had this real cool, like, full sound to it. And like, your voice is very encapsulating from, from listening to different artists and obviously having some genres that I favor more than others, but it was a nice change of pace, and at least for me, I thought it was really cool. So I'm excited to dive into more after this interview. But the next question, Eric, if there was another musical instrument you could master, what would it be?
You just asked. You just asked a question based on a false premise. You said if there was another musical instrument you could master. That question assumes that I've mastered a musical instrument, and I have
Listen,
not.
I'll assume you're pretty proficient at what you
I
do.
am a shit guitar player to the point where, I mean, my technique with Kevin is I come in, I have my ideas, we get a rhythm on it, we run a quick a click track.
Yeah.
I play along to it. Sometimes I'll sing and play at the same time. Others I'll just strum along. Then I'll do a vocal on top of it, and then we'll start adding drums and bass. And I will make him promise, either today while I'm here or after I leave, you are going to replace my guitar with your guitar. I cannot stand the sound of my guitar playing. It's not actually that bad. Like if you see me live, I'm a functional 3-chord guitar player. I can even move my hands around a little bit and do bar chords, but I've never put in the 10,000 hours to become a serviceable guitar player. I will say this though, to respond honestly to the question, and this to the extent any young musicians are listening or people who care. Everybody should learn the piano, and I regret that I did not learn the piano when I was a toddler, because music theory, the way all this stuff comes together, is literally at your fingertips in front of a piano.
Yeah.
So if I had learned piano, or if I were to learn piano, I think my songwriting would open up. My vista would open up enormously. I'm not going to. I'm stuck. I am who I am. Like this bird is cooked. However, but if I had a choice of one instrument, not even to master, to learn to the point where I would have an intuitive understanding of music theory much faster, I would be the piano. Absolutely.
I wholeheartedly agree with this sentiment of learning piano. I did not learn piano, and I kind of regret it. I can make my way around a piano, but I'm not as good as I could be. And I currently live in an apartment, so I imagine lugging I could get a digital piano or whatever.
Digital piano and headphones, yeah.
Yeah, digital piano and headphones, but I picked up a bass recently, so I'll probably have to spend time, trying to noodle around with that first before I make my way to piano.
Anything is good.
Anything is good. You're right, Eric. Next question. If you were to compile a dream tour lineup, including yourself, who would you want to have on your tour?
That's easy because it's current. One of my favorite new albums is by Carsey Blanton. She's an amazing songwriter who's been around for a while. She just put out an album called Love and Rage. It very much falls into the wheelhouse of what I do, and I think it's fantastic. I would love to open for Carsey Blanton. And who else would people appreciate on that tour? Maybe it would be me as a pre-fluffer, Carsey as a fluffer, and then one of the old hat great Americana people like Lyle Lovett or John Hyatt, or one of those artists from the concerts I go to where I'm psyched because most of the heads I see in front of me on men are bald. And I feel like, oh, cool. I'm one of the young ones in here. I think that would be a nice package tour. Me and Carsey opening for Carsey, who's opening up for Lyle Lovett, who's just a consummate gentleman, an amazing performer, and has one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard in my life. That would be my dream tour right now.
There we go. You are the first person to say I'd love to have bald people, old bald people at my show on any interview I've ever done.
That's different. I said I'd love to be opening for somebody whose shows typically pull in that older audience, because that older audience has more money Therefore, the place is more likely to be filled, and I'm more likely to be able to pay my band better if I'm opening for that person. But I mean, I still want 18-year-old groupies storming the stage. Don't think, don't think I'm any different than anybody who ever wanted to be a rock and roll star. But I'm just thinking practically here about what might work.
That's smart. I like that though. That's a interesting way to approach it that I have not heard of thus far. So I appreciate it. Next question, Eric. Favorite TV show, favorite movie?
Well, I'll start with favorite movie because that's the easiest. This is Spinal Tap.
Oh, classic. Got it.
It's a masterpiece, and
is.
either you get it or you don't. Favorite TV show in recent years was Breaking Bad, followed by Better Call Saul, which I can't say one without the other.
Yeah.
And I'm actually at this very moment quite worried because there were reports about Bob Odenkirk collapsing in filming yesterday, and I'm praying that he's okay, because not just because I love the show, because I love him. He's just
a great actor.
He's a great actor, but he's also an amazing, sweet, funny, kind human being. So I don't give a shit if there's never another Better Call Saul. I want that dude, who I know has young children, to be okay, and I hope desperately. So that would be, in recent years, my favorite TV show, and of course The Sopranos, because you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're talking about.
Anything more to you about what I'm saying?
I already know. I know. Yeah, I know. That is a New Jersey. You have to. I feel like that is. You have to have that marked off on your Jersey card. You have to have watched The Sopranos.
Absolutely.
Next question, Eric. If you were trapped on a desert island for the next month and there was one album you could bring with you to listen to, what would it be?
It would have to be The Longest. I'm going to go outside of Americana right now, and I'm going to say Ramones Mania.
Ooh, that's a good classic.
I'm a big Ramones fan. You don't hear it in my oeuvre, although I do have a song about Joey Ramone called "The Crush of the Moment," and I do occasionally get a little louder with the guitars. But Ramones, I mean, the Ramones have like 50 mini masterpieces that are like blasts of joy and angst and love. And Ramones Mania, it was either a double or triple album, which just it's crammed with the most Ramones songs you can fit onto one album. So that's what I would want on that island.
There we go.
My ears would bleed, but I'd be happy until I.
True. Yeah, that is very true. But at the same time, you gotta stick to your guns, and I appreciate that. The question I've been asking a lot of people that I've been having on recently, just more so within the past year of quarantine, for people watching at home who have made it, thus far through the interview, which thank you very greatly for watching this long. What do you want people to take away from your music, whether it be from the musical aspect of what you're doing, the lyrical aspect, or kind of a combination of those two things? I always think it's a really cool send-off to have the artists speak about, what they do and why they do it, and, what they want other people to get.
First of all, everybody who creates art, to one extent or another, is asking the world to love him.
That's fair. Yeah.
Creation of art is a plea for love. So I want everyone to love me. But assuming that not everybody has a chance to get to know me and love me, or that they don't find me particularly lovable, the most important thing, all art, there's an expression a philosopher used that I learned in college, and I'm not sure who said it. It was something along the lines of a great novel or a great work of art is something that adds to the stock of available reality. And I've always loved that expression. If something you have experienced, whether visually, sonically, texturally, whatever, if something changes your worldview, either expands it or adjusts it, or gives you a different way of seeing things, or increases your capacity for joy by this much, or the depth of your feeling of sadness by this much, then that has added to the stock of that person's available reality. If my music can have that kind of impact, that would thrill me. And it's added to the stock of my available reality, so it's already satisfied its mission for the guy who created it. If I could have that kind of effect on others, whether it be millions or a couple, then that would be wonderful.
There we go. Well, very profoundly spoken, Eric.
Dude, here, wait. Seriously,
there
come
we
on.
Go.
Take it. I got cough to get off. Seriously, man.
The last thing, Eric, tell the people where they can find you at on social media, what you have coming up in the next couple months, and anything else you would like to plug.
I don't believe in social media. I eschew technology. I live on an ashram, and you'll just have to drive out here to find me.
Oh, there you go.
No, I'm on Facebook at Eric Harrison, singer songwriter. I'm on Instagram at Eric Harrison Music. I have a YouTube channel, which I think is also at Eric Harrison Music. Of course, on all the streaming services, Spotify, Apple, Tidal, Deezer, etc. I'm afraid of Twitter, so I only go there when I absolutely have to. I'm also afraid of Instagram because of like seeing my kids' friends in bikinis, like liking my posts. Like there should be a wall that should not be a part of my life, and I should not be a part of theirs. So if only they made Instagram for Americana music fans, like Instacana or something. But that's where I am. If any of your viewers is interested, they are welcome to check me out or to say, I've heard enough of this guy. See ya. That's okay too.
Oh,
but it has been a real pleasure talking to somebody who has a similar enthusiasm for music that I do. So I thank you deeply for that.
Thank you, Eric. Obviously, want to give a massive shout outs to Erica for hooking this up. She's great. Love her.
I would have said thank you, Erica, much earlier, but for my insecurity over how to pronounce her last name.
I just say Erica.
Erica Money Paul PR DAuR. Shit.
It's close enough. Well,
Erica is wonderful, and her firm Muddy Paw PR are wonderful because they take almost nobodies like me, and they help us sink our tendrils a little bit deeper into the world of the music that we love, and they do it in a very forthright way. They don't BS us and tell us, give me $10,000 and I'm going to make you famous. They say, here are the avenues that are available to you. Get us your product in a way that we're not embarrassed to promote it, and they've helped promote it. So I'm very indebted to Erica and Angela of Muddy Paw PR, and they can cut this piece of the interview and use it as an endorsement, even if they become dissatisfied with me in the future.
I've endorsed them heavily as well. So again, shout outs to Angela and Erica. Great people, love them to death. But more specifically, if you came here to check out Eric, all of the links will be in the description where you can find him out on social media. Fortunately, he's not on Twitter just because, we're all scared.
I'm on Twitter, but I'm too afraid to really use it. So you're not going to see any real content there.
But if you want to go check out all of the social media, it'll all be below. Go watch it. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel, of course. And if you enjoyed this interview, share, like, and subscribe. It goes a long way. And huge thanks to Eric for coming on. As a fellow New Jerseyan, thank you very much for coming on.
Forget about it. Thanks, Brandon.